I just moved into a new apartment. The neighborhood is quiet, and the neighbors rarely show up. An ideal place to live alone. The only thing that bothered me was the apartment across the hall. No one ever went in there. Old newspapers were lying in the mailbox, and dust was collecting under the door. The neighbors said it had been vacant for several years, but I felt like something was off about that apartment. One evening, as I was coming home, I noticed that the door to that apartment was slightly ajar. I approached closer, already wanting to knock, but at that moment, the door slammed shut, as if someone had been watching me and waiting for me to come near. I felt chills run down my spine, but I convinced myself it was just a coincidence. But everything changed a couple of days later. I woke up one night to a strange sound, like someone was walking slowly and carefully down the hallway behind the wall. I listened closely. Yes, footsteps. Quiet but distinct, right across from my apartment, where no one should be living. I thought maybe a neighbor had mistakenly gone in there and decided not to think too much about it. The next night, I heard sounds again, but this time they were different. There was a soft tapping, as if someone was gently tapping their finger on the wall. My gaze turned to the door across the hall. I felt increasingly anxious, but curiosity overcame my fear, and I approached my door to listen. The tapping stopped, but it was replaced by a barely audible whisper. Quiet, almost imperceptible, but it was calling me. My hands trembled, and I stepped back. The next morning, I paid attention to the apartment across the hall again. I swear the doorknob was covered in dirty smudges, as if someone had touched it. All day I tried not to think about it, but I couldn't help it. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The time was nearing midnight, and suddenly I heard footsteps in the hallway again, but this time they stopped right at my door. I froze. Someone quietly knocked on my door. Once, twice. Silence. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like the entire building could hear it. I approached the peephole. The hallway was empty, but I could see that the doorknob of my door was slowly starting to turn. I stepped back, grabbing my phone. I quickly called the police. They said they would be there soon, but I had a strange feeling that they wouldn't be able to help. As soon as I stepped away from the door, the whispering began to intensify, sounding right in my head as if someone was speaking into my ear. The voice was indistinct, but I could make out one word. It repeated over and over.
Come.
I dropped the phone, and when I picked it up, I noticed someone was looking through the peephole from the apartment across the hall. The eyes were dark, lacking any humanity, yet they watched me unblinkingly as if they could see right through the door. I recoiled from the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Those eyes, black and bottomless, stared at me as if they knew my deepest fears. I couldn't believe they actually existed, that it wasn't just my imagination, but I understood. This was something real and terrifying. The whisper echoed in my mind. That voice, dry and hollow, repeated one word again and again, calling to me.
Come, come.
I pressed myself against the wall, trying to cover my ears, but the voice wouldn't stop. It grew louder, stronger, penetrating the deepest parts of my mind. I realized it couldn't go on like this. There had to be an explanation, a way out. Deciding that fear would no longer control me, I headed toward the door of the apartment across the hall.
Now or never,
I thought as I stood at the threshold. The door was slightly ajar. Everything looked as if someone was waiting for me. Inside was dark and the air was damp and cold. I stepped in, feeling my footsteps echoing. The space felt wrong. The room was empty, but the walls seemed to close in and the air was thick with the smell of decay. But worst of all was the black figure I saw deep in the room. It was the same silhouette I had seen through the peephole, motionless, silent, with those same black eyes. It was staring right at me, and a chilling tremor coursed through me from its gaze. At that moment, I realized I couldn't move. My legs felt heavy as stone and my breath quickened. The whisper sounded again in my head.
You've come. Now you'll stay.
The figure moved toward me, slowly but inexorably, and each of its movements seemed a reflection of my deepest fears. I couldn't scream. There was only silence, and this unbearable sense of despair. The next day, the neighbors noticed that my apartment door was open. The police came, but found no signs of forced entry or struggle. My belongings remained in place, as if I had simply left. However, everyone who entered my apartment felt a strange sensation, an unexplainable cold, and the feeling of being watched. Since then, the residents began to notice that someone continued to walk down the hallway, especially at night. In that moment when the silence seems absolute, someone knocks at their door, calling and whispering, "Come."
Stories may end, but the fear remains. Subscribe to uncover more secrets hidden in the darkness. Until we meet again in the world of nightmarish shadows.